Okay, this Hangouts on Air is live. Let's see. Okay, we should be live on YouTube. I will see if we actually are. Can anybody type into the chat if we are live? That would be really useful. But yeah, I think we're doing well. So hopefully we'll be live. Yep, we are live. With me, by the way, is Alex Chin. And we're just gonna talk over a couple things. Alex, do you want to say hi, introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Alex Chin. I also debated for Nueva. Team code was Nueva CC. And yeah, I'm just here to help out with DebateCast and add my opinions and other stuff there.
Yeah. Okay. So let's sort of break down what we're going to talk about. Obviously, we'll be answering your questions throughout the sort of live stream, but we're going to start off with like a couple prepared pieces of like topics of conversation. So the first is like a breakdown of Harker. The tournament finished like 15 minutes ago. So we'll just talk over like some of the teams that we saw there, whether or not the strength of schedule was harder than last year, so on and so forth. We'll go on to like the November PF topic. This will be sort of brief because we don't know a ton about it, but we sort of have like baseline opinions. And then we'll sort of be introducing something that Alex and I created, and like an AMA that we'll be hosting on the debate subreddit in about like 2 to 3 weeks time. And so like that'll be the majority of the podcast. And we suggest everybody asks any questions that they have at that time. But as of right now, we're just going to talk about Harker. Alex, do you want to start talking about it?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Nueva PS just picked up on 2-1 in finals. And so over Mission. And so that was an exciting last round. But we just want to sort of like go over in general some of like the arguments that we saw there, or that like we're seeing there, were used there, like more successful ones, less successful ones, and just like other stuff in general about the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. So we can start off. I'm just making the post on Reddit right now. That way we can announce it. But we can start off talking sort of about the general sort of arguments that we saw. So Alex and I both coached at camp over the summer. It was on the same topic that was at Harker. And so our posts were primarily, or the topics that we had were like standard dad topics. Do you remember any of them, Alex?
You mean just general arguments and stuff?
Yeah, just the general arguments. We'll start off with that.
Yeah, so like on general AF strategies comprised of like winning solvency on THAAD, so essentially proving that like THAAD improves security of South Korea, and then also winning some sort of link into like North Korean aggression needs to be prevented by THAAD. That was in general sort of like the affirmative story that was being told at camp. And I would say in general, there are also like maybe there's a little more diversity, maybe like 2 distinct neg strategies. The first being sort of a standard counter-conflict approach, running arguments about like arms races or other ways that like that actually leads to more conflict in the region, or provokes North Korea, causes US preemptive strikes, with a secondary negative strategy that some teams were using being to actually state that like North Korea was not a threat, and to use that to push back against the broad front of AF offense, and then just try to win marginal impacts like Chinese sanctions and other stuff like that.
Ability, or like North Korea doesn't have the intent, or because I did notice one other strategy that they had was that like North Korea has a terminal intent and THAAD is ineffective, right? Which is sort of what you were talking about. But either way, they're interesting because they're defensive strategies that are used to win like a on net, nothing happens, so we should just not do anything sort of argument, which is a different strategy than most, at least. So it relates to the uniqueness of the topic. But we can start talking about the Harker tournament. Alex and I have been going there for what, 4 years?
4 years. Yeah, we started as novices. They actually have a separate novice division for like students, just like middle schoolers, and that's where we went our freshman year because that was our first year of our team. But we've been going there for a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty fantastic. So like I have pulled up right now, sharing with everybody just sort of a general view of the exactly what's going on with like the tab room, or like the tab room page going with Harker. And so like I hope everybody can sort of see what's going on. We can like look through the speaker awards because everybody loves looking at speaks. So like, just starting off, a Nueva team member, Paco, our very good friend, was the first speaker at the tournament with what, like 0.1 points more than David Warno, who's a very good debater in his senior year. So good showing for Nueva. A surprisingly like high amount of points spread across, or high amount of points. I guess judging was decently well, or decent because normally you don't see lay judges giving like 0.8 points, right? Generally decimal points are indicative of flow judges because they need to differentiate between what's a 29 and what's a 30. And sometimes you don't reach the 30, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so like, Paco's partner, Emily Stearman, coming in at 5th, Nueva doing pretty well. David Warno's partner, Ben Park, coming in at 6th for speaker awards. I personally, I don't know what your opinion is, Alex, but I personally think speaker awards are silly. I think they're sort of useless, but I don't know. What do you think?
I would agree with that. Like, speaker awards are not really that like important in the grand scheme of things. I think that like one way that you'll see that is that like oftentimes good speakers do well, but not all good teams have like strong speaker award finishes. I think that oftentimes like teams that are very good, or teams that speak very pretty often do very well, but there are plenty of other ways to do well. Which like being a stronger technical team that maybe doesn't speak as pretty is perfectly okay as long as you're winning ballots some other way.
And I think that's really fair. And one thing to note is sometimes because speaker awards are so subjective, you should like never feel bad if you don't get speaker award or like a good speaker points. Because like there are things that you can do in general to make yourself better, but not something that you can say like, oh, every round I know exactly what I need to do to get a 30. I mean, for example, Presentation VM, who was the 1 seed at the tournament, was I think like 15th on the speaker awards, right? Despite being like the number 1 team at the tournament, or like the number 1 team out of prelims, where speaker points matter, right? Where speaker points are a thing. So it just goes to show sometimes you'll get low speaker points because your judges don't give out a ton of speaker points, but it doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it's also like up to the judge because speaker points are, you could actually argue in like some respects more dependent on the judge than the actual debaters.
Oh yeah. And like, yeah, the debate is supposed to be reasonably deterministic, right? So obviously speaker points come about as like the most subjective part.
Yeah.
Let's see. We can go into, yeah. What were you going to say?
Yeah. One other thing that we could discuss too is like relative tournament strength. In general, I think that actually this tournament strength was a little bit higher this year than last year. In general, I think that overall, actually, my senior year when I competed there, the pool was actually like very, very easy. There were very few like high power teams there. This year, there are like a couple more. I would say both of the teams in finals are excellent.
Quarry Lane is pretty good. Yeah, both teams in finals are definitely solid TOC contenders.
Yeah, and there's some like there's a better depth of field in terms of just overall teams.
Yeah,
I would say compared to 2 years ago, the field's a little bit weaker.
Although 2 years ago, Alex, Nueva sent 4 teams, all of which qualified to the TOC, 3 of which qualified to the TOC that year. So
yeah, and there were
we flooded the field and raised it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of like the way Harker sort of shakes down. The tournament was reasonably simple. I like the Harker tournament because it runs on time. It's very efficient. The judging that I have had at the tournament has always been decent. This year, they strove to have more tournament hires. So in this final round, apparently all 3 of these are tournament hires. They were all very good judges, according to like friends that we knew that were in the round, which is indicative of the tournament trying to build success, right? Like they know debaters seek out tournaments with good judges, and so you want to look for you want to have the best judges at your tournament. That way you can guarantee you get the best debaters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Chris Harris is a very good judge, Victor, so on and so forth, Alex Martell, all known. And even if you don't know these judges, you can go sort of like click on one of the names, try to see their full historical record, and then sort of see like, okay, look, this person did speech and policy in high school and then started going off with like policy in college. So they're definitely very well versed to give feedback to a public forum round, especially a high school one.
Yeah. And going sort of on the arguments that happened at Harker, I think in general, I've been looking through sort of like flows from a lot of like the later rounds, the out rounds,
Right.
the high level prelim rounds that I would like observe two things specifically. The first being that the argumentation is pretty similar in general to what we've seen at camp. It doesn't seem like very much new argumentation is really, or very much new effective argumentation is coming to the table. I know there were like a couple of teams running sort of like something that you could almost call like along the lines of a K with like them and militarization. So that's sort of like an interesting argument that's developed. But in general, I actually think, secondly, that the cases are actually converging in terms of case strategy. That
absolutely
cases read two sections, each with multiple warrants. The first being a bunch of reasons why North Korea will attack, or missiles will be shot at South Korea, and the second being a bunch of reasons why THAAD will solve this problem. And I think that a lot of affirmative teams are figuring out that this is the strategy that they want to be running, and that a lot of teams are converging on this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We can sort of move on if people sort of think that the Harker topic is exhaustive. They don't really want to talk about the tournament more. To just like briefly go over the next year's PF topic, because I know it was released either today or yesterday. And so we may as well talk about that to some degree. Do you remember the resolution? I think I have it pulled up here.
Yeah, I believe it is resolved. The United States should require universal background checks for all gun sales and transfers of ownership.
Okay, so just like starting off, right? Like no one believes that. I mean, very few people believe that universal background checks don't or are bad. So like the neg has a really tough time, right? The AF gets sort of this like rhetoric of we may as well just do it, because a lot of the neg strategy is going to be saying like reading impact defense, like they did on the THAAD topic, right? Saying like THAAD is ineffective or North Korea is not a threat. A similar thing is going to have to happen on this topic, where the neg is going to have to say background checks don't work or background checks won't happen even if you require them, so on and so forth. But no matter what, right, like the AF still gets this fantastic rhetoric of, yeah, but even if it doesn't work, like it's still better than right now, so we should just do it.
Yeah, exactly. I would add that whenever you're looking for neg ground on a topic and you can't find much that exists, that one thing you can always look into is like arguments along the lines of like backlash and complacency, regardless of like how much you believe those arguments are true. And I think that they definitely have different amounts of validity on different topics. That's always a good place to sort of go digging if you are not sure like how maybe the like more blatantly evident arguments would play out for the con.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like it makes sense, right? Like if that's sort of the way that it works. If you sort of like debate it in a way that's like, oh, background checks like are bad, just like straight up without reading any layered impact defense, because you're so different from the normal, from what most people believe, you're going to have a tough time with that resolution. You know, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to like win that debate.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's
yeah, important to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah. So we can start it. That's anybody have any questions about like the topic? Oh, someone's asking for topics with high side skew. Is it worth, flipping a side or flipping second? I can sort of give you the technique that I sort of thought was useful, like our senior year, which was if there's a high side skew, the team that you should pick the side that is truer in elimination rounds. And then the side that is, I prefer speaking second. So at the TOC this year, right, like the AF was definitely truer, but we flipped second every time, no matter what. Whereas like Matt and Jake flipped AF in every elim that they could because the AF was true and they should debate the true side. And I honestly believe like that's a sort of a better way to do it, because saying true things is just better. You can just say true things. Like there's really no way to contest that, you know?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Zubin's saying. I think that one thing you'll look at is that, for example, when Matt and Jake would prep, they would basically figure out like which side they thought was true. And they would really they would believe that side. If you look at like their Bronx run, right, the Elims are all pro. If you look at like most of their like out round runs, they know which side they're stronger on. They know which side they're better at debating. And I would also add to Zubin's point, in elimination rounds, the judging quality will be better, which also means necessarily no one gets that like super easy advantage off of having like the lay judge and speaking second and making up new stuff. So like some of the advantages of going second are go away in elimination rounds, which is why it's also like more advantageous to pick like the side as opposed to the speaking order.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And like, I think like, so some people are asking like, is it going to be similar to the IoT topic, which I don't know. Did you debate the IoT topic, Alex?
I did not debate the IoT topic, but
yeah, neither did I. They sort of stick bad topics into November, and then we just don't end up debating it. Because the only local tournament that Nueva would go to is presentation, where we send LD teams, but not really very many PFers. Either way, so like we didn't really debate the IoT topic, but what do you?
Yeah, I would say that the side skew in this will not be anything near the IoT topic. I think that there's much more negative ground here, just because that resolution in particular was like very, very hard, very, very difficult for the negative side. Without even debating it,
it allowed the AF to read like advocacies that skewed out of any negative impacts, right? Which then sort of kills the rest of the debate, because the AF says, we have this great thing. The neg says, here's this other thing that's bad. And the AF says, well, we only care about this great thing, and none of it is bad.
Exactly. And especially when the negative harms are restricted to like privacy, that's really detrimental to like an already smaller ground that they're going to restrict it again. So I think here you definitely have like more arguments to work with.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to see a topic that is to like a sizable degree not specific to like a certain impact scenario, because I think like that's really important in my mind. Whereas even like several topics have had like very confined impact scenarios, right? Like this thing is good for this one thing, or like the safety of South Korea, or South Korea's like best interest, right? Like it keeps the debate confined rather than having like a more expansive worldview, rather than allowing for debaters to sort of be creative in the arguments they come up with. And so when the resolution is just like about it's about a policy implication, right? In which case it makes it a lot better. You actually get to argue about interesting things.
Yeah, and I think you'll see this, like, for example, like Zubin was saying on this topic, the September topic last year, everybody would come to the same impacts at the end of the round. And you can really contrast that with, like, for example, like the carbon tax topic for 2 years ago, when like the debate was very much strictly like environmental versus economics, where the debate happened more at the impact level and the weighing level, as opposed to the link level, with everybody going towards the same impacts.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I think like that link weighting is like the way that you sort of really critically like separate yourself as like a solid debater as like from a really good debater, because link weighing is really hard to do, because it's not just like number based, right? It's not like, oh, they have like this impact that says 30,000 people will die, and we have this impact saying 35,000 people will be saved. Link weighing is about comparing the like analysis given in specific arguments that link you to a specific impact, and that's much harder to do. And that comes along with building a strong narrative, because then you can say like, look at our link story, look at how contested it is, look at the way that our link story flows together, and that's something that's important.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex, people are asking you for, like, are we coaching Nueva?
All right, let's just, we can just be explicit about this. So I am coaching for Boston Latin School.
And yeah. Do you want to tell us about the program, Alex?
Sure. Yeah. So Boston Latin School is a program in Massachusetts. It's about like a 30-minute public transit ride from Harvard, which is why it's really convenient for me. And so they compete at like both the majority of local Massachusetts tournaments, and then also like a couple national circuit tournaments. Most all of them like on the East Coast.
They
So if
had a
you're going
really
things like
solid set of teams a while ago too, right?
yeah,
They were in
so
like a
like
rebuilding phase.
yeah, my junior year they had Boston Latin YY, who we actually debated at TOC, and they were a pretty strong team, and so they're looking to sort of like revamp it up this year. Yeah, so if you're going to tournaments like UPenn, stuff like that on the East Coast, I'll probably see you there.
UPenn being the smallest of the big three tournaments, right? That weekend. I think this year it's the same. Berkeley, Harvard, and UPenn are all in the same weekend.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
is that's quite a weekend, but it'll be fun. I think so I'm not coaching for a specific school. I didn't really have the time commitment to make over the course of the school year. So I'll be flying out for certain schools for tournaments. So for example, for Bronx, I'm coaching for the college preparatory school. And so like I'll be coaching with them, staying with them for like the 4 days that they're there. And so like that's something that's like it's something that's fun, right? Like and I think it's helpful too because having a first year out as a coach, and this is not to like pitch me, but like just the concept in general is really useful, right? You get like immediate feedback because they're able to watch your rounds. They're not a full-time coach, which means like you're not beholden to them for everything. They're not checking your arguments. They're just saying like, hey, in round, you debated like this. And that's something that's like really hard to get, that like instantaneous in-round feedback is something that like camps give you, but you don't entirely get from like big national circuit tournaments, you know?
Yeah. I would also point out like one of the main advantages that I felt as like, for example, at Nueva, we had first year, second year out coaches. And one of the reasons that I really appreciated their coaching was that like they have a level of relative expertise that's very like recent right off the circuit.
Yeah.
And B, they're often like still really interested in the topics because they just debated them. And it's not even like work for them to think about the topic because they're just going to inherently be thinking in the way that they thought at debate tournaments, which means they're sort of just like naturally processing things and thinking about strategy in a way that's really
exactly.
beneficial to be able to sort of access.
Yeah. And one thing that's really important is they're new judges. And this is something that I only realized after coaching at a camp, but judging debate rounds gives you a level of understanding of like a way a debate round functions that is substantially different than like anything else, right? You get to see the way the arguments interact without having said them because because you have like no filter, you don't know exactly which argument is better from the onset. You can see exactly what the debaters say and then how that translates into like a victory or a loss.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important, you know, as far as debate rounds go.
Yeah. And if people are wondering who is coaching for Nueva, out of like our year, mostly it's Griffin Tarpening, which is Zubin's partner, and also Jake Mingarelli went with them to Yale and stuff. So there are like sort of like one tournament exceptions where some of us might be there just once or twice.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think like I might be at Stanford the tournament, but I might not be coaching for Nueva. Granted, none of us are ever going to judge that school because we
that
can't.
Would be a huge conflict of interest. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be enormous. It's nice to have a school that you come from and then a school that you're working for. It's always fun to like sort of expand your circle.
Exactly.
Any other last minute questions before we start switching over to different topics, before we start moving on with our agenda? I think we're coming up right about to the time that we would start talking about what Alex and I are doing like to help the debate community. So like the sort of like business that we run and stuff like that. And then like talking about the AMA that we might host in the coming weeks. So if you're on chat, by all means, post any questions that you can. One thing that Alex, that we can talk about really quickly while we're waiting for people is disclosure in PF.
Yeah.
Do you want to chime in?
Yeah. Okay. Especially with like sort of the recent influx and creation of the PF wiki and stuff like that. I think that it's really interesting to think about like disclosure in PF, especially like given the sort of philosophical nature of PF supposed to be like sort of like the layman's debate event.
Policy.
And exactly. And so I think personally, like in general, disclosure does like really help like smaller schools and like increase participation. One thing we on the Wave Debate team have had a lot of discussions about this. One other thing that it would greatly reduce is a miscut evidence, which in
Yes.
LD or policy is like that already has been like greatly reduced by via the reason that they actually have to read their cards verbatim. But in PF, where almost everybody paraphrases, we paraphrase, the instances of miscut evidence are far, far higher. So one of the major advantages that I think of disclosure is that if you're going to read a bunch of evidence that doesn't actually say what you say it says, you're not going to be able to win rounds with disclosure.
Yeah, and I think like that's probably the biggest reason why disclosure should exist, especially in public forum. Given that the topic round doesn't, because like public forum doesn't really allow for plans and shouldn't really allow for like major advocacies, although that's like a debate that should be had. Because like my personal belief is either you allow for both or you can't really allow for either. And then it's just truth testing. But either way, if public forum is going for the idea that like, you know, we're sort of this confined form of debate where we're just going to talk about this like resolution in a general sense, we're not going to talk about like specific mandates, then it's not worth it to have disclosure, except for the fact that you need to check back against evidence abuse. And it's something that I think is important because I notice I'm doing it as a judge. I have in my paradigm, right, that like I will call for every card that I'm going to vote off of, which is incredibly interventionist of me. And then I will vote you down if the evidence doesn't say what you say it is. Because I know how hard it is in round to check evidence abuse, right? Your 2 minutes of prep time is not going to do it for you. So there's no way that you have the ability to do it. So I have to do it as the judge. And that's just a shitty way to do the event, right? So having disclosure, as Alex said, right, raises the evidentiary standard, because if I have to post the cards that I'm saying and someone just like peeps on my document and says like, hey, all these cards that you have, like half of them are just straight up lies, or they're from like this blog .wikispaces.com. That's probably not a reputable source. And then you can sort of build an argument from there and say like, look, I know all your stuff from the onset is like wrong, right? And that gives you ability to critique evidence in the debate round. That doesn't happen when, you know, you have to check it for your 30 seconds of prep time.
Yeah, this also goes, I think there are two really important points to make here. The first is that a good debater can win a contested argument. Although we included build cases so that it's very technically difficult for rebuttals to address everything, and teams that mess up on a link make it a very easy win. Anybody who is good at debate can win and needs to be able to win, even if their arguments are contested, even if all of their links are contested. Like you have to be able to beat prep outs in late rounds. And so I don't really think that the argument that like, oh, disclosure means then they know what we're running necessarily holds a ton of weight. And the second thing to point out being that like, for example, at the TOC, internet is totally valid during prep time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you prep your argument out, in 2 minutes, it means that like you're not really winning a debate round. You're winning like some like niche thing that's definitely false that you just like made up, and for some reason they don't have any like knowledge about, which isn't like a very good way, like a very didactic or a very fair way for debate to go about. So I think in general, like a lot of those sorts of claims can be addressed by just sort of thinking about like what debate should be and like what good debater should be.
And like a lot of the stuff that people do in regards to disclosure is they just ask like, and I know in like I've seen this happen where people, when they're wondering about whether or not something is disclosed or maybe there was an error, they're like, hey, have you disclosed any of your stuff online? Is it up before the round, right? They'll ask this. And if the other team's like, oh no, sorry, like we didn't, and then they like post it, that's totally fine, right? I've seen it happen like in the round, and then the team that asked just gets like 15 minutes just to sort of like leaf through the most recent disclosure because that's important, right? And they do it more as like a norm setting thing rather than a like, haha, I found this little thing that's going to beat you. It's more like, hey, this is good for debate. And I think
exactly. Like the argument is not that like disclosure should be used like to pick up easy wins, because it shouldn't.
Yes.
Like when theory becomes something where it's like too easy, where the theory debate always comes first, and like you can, if you like LD, you'll know like the controversies on stuff like this. That's not a great end, right? In many people's minds. The argument for disclosure is that it makes debate a better event, which is what any sort of like norm like that is supposed to do.
Yeah. I noticed a bunch of people are asking about like, tips for teams that don't have any coaches. And I think this is a good segue into sort of like
Yeah.
the next 4 topics that we're going to talk about. But just like very briefly, one thing that's like really helpful is to lose a lot. Because we didn't have like, we had like a parent as our coach, and like I loved him and he did so much work for us, but there wasn't a lot of like strategic coaching in regards to like what to say and how to win debate, right? Craig Becker, who was a parent, did so much for our team to grow it. But like, as far as coaching went, we couldn't get a ton of help. And so like the team started small and we got better by losing a lot, like, and consistently. Because every round, you sort of debrief with your partner and with your team and say like, hey, this thing happened. Why did I lose? And just by a process of like, Alex, all of us that were on the debate team, like our freshman year, we're just good friends and we just sort of talked constantly. We sort of started to understand why we were losing. And then it allows you to fix it in the next round, right? You can say like, I recognize I messed up in this way. I'm not going to do that again, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And we can sort of segue into our next thing. I did have like a little slide that was going to come in, but I can't do that anymore. Basically, Alex and I are hosting an AMA in 2 weeks, and we'll post on the debate subreddit soon about this. It'll be over Bronx weekend. And the AMA is about like our company, which is called like Next Level Debate. And so Alex and I ran a debate camp this summer. It was just like a 1 week, 5-day sessions of debate camp. They were very short, sort of like 10-hour days. And it was like targeted at middle schoolers. And we had middle and like high school debaters at our camp. And we worked with them to sort of like improve their skills very individually. And so we realized like, hey, as first year outs, we bring sort of like a relatively unique view. And like, there are so many ideas that Alex and I have about like offering coaching services to debaters that we didn't get a chance to get when we were in high school, to say like, hey, you know what, why don't we give that to everybody, right? Like, why don't we give people that opportunity?
Yeah.
So
we would say sort of like the inception for this company is that like we realized like starting a debate team is hard, being a lone wolf is hard, being a small debate team is hard, being even a big debate team but not on like the national circuit it's hard to make that jump too, right? Like there are just all of these steps in the process that I mean, Zubin and I were very lucky to have like a Les Phillips come in and help our program like make that jump to be able to like get that structure. But we also understand what it was like for a year and a half to have like no formal coaching structure and to sort of like struggle through like getting there and how to figure that out. So that's something that like we don't want anyone else to have to go through and to want to be able to provide structure for.
Yeah, exactly. And like we noticed that, a lot of the administrative stuff, right? Like schools can do decently well because schools are great at dealing with administrative stuff because they have administrations. But it is like the nitty gritty sort of gamification of debate that is really difficult for anybody to come in and teach, right? Like having your history professor try to teach you how to win a flow round is really difficult because unless they debated that kind of flow debate, it's just not going to be sort of a skill that translates easily from other, like activities, right? Obviously, if you're a logical thinker, you can, if you have practice in that, you can get a jump on everybody, but it is something that is very specific to the event of debate. So we sort of wanted to change that, give that opportunity to more people. And so Alex, do you want to sort of like talk about the camp that we ran this year?
Sure. So as Zubin was saying, we ran 2 5-day sessions of a small debate camp. It was about 1 lab each time. And it was Zubin, I, and Jake Mangarelli, so from Nueva MS. And our goal there was just to provide sort of like a more affordable, more local camp opportunity. We recognize that like a lot of times the only way to get like really expertise, flow-oriented help is these like big overnight camps that cost a lot of money or far away. And so our aim was sort of to like mitigate that and provide like another opportunity. And so we went through sort of like all the basics of debate, the more complicated technical aspects, and then like ended with practice rounds and stuff.
Yeah, and so like our goal, what we really sort of discovered was like, because there were 3 of us and, like 15 or a little bit more kids, the idea was we can sort of we can teach people a lot more individually than like a much larger sort of system, right? And like both Alex and I worked and will work at large national debate camps that are teaching like varsity members and stuff like that. And our thought was, like Alex said, right, we need to sort of bring like a more local and affordable flair to it, because we noticed that, you know, camps cost an extraordinary amount of money, and they last really long. So
Yeah.
like Griffin and I went to camp once in our 4 years, right? And the one time we went to camp, it was just because we had like 1 week in the summer that we were both free, and we were just like, well, here's the local camp, and it cost like a ton of money, and it was like not reasonable to go to. Whereas like, you know, I couldn't go to camp like my junior year because it would have been 2-3 weeks of my summer that would have been just like gone, and I was doing like work or whatever. You just don't have the time, and a lot of people don't have the $4,000 to shell out for a camp and spend like 3 weeks away from home. It's just not feasible, right? So we took like a much smaller approach to it. I mean, Alex can tell you where we ran the camp itself.
Yeah, I mean, the camps were run like out of our houses to like essentially cut down the cost, make the camps more affordable. Yeah, and that was just like the first step and caused a lot of realizations for us, as Zubin was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And so like Pranav is asking, like, are you planning to expand your staff and camp size? And we absolutely are. So we want to give like the same people that came to our camp last year an awesome opportunity again, because people liked it. But what we also want to do is expand it so that we can fit, you know, like debaters who have been practiced for a little bit more, debaters who have been, you know, who are like more interested in actually competing in the event. Our camp last year was targeted more at beginners. This year we're sort of focusing on like, you know, beginner all the way to like reasonably advanced, but can't go to like a full national camp. And so we're going to expand our coaching size. We're shooting for about, I think Alex and my numbers were about 2 sessions of about 60 kids is the hope.
Yep.
And that should give like a solid amount of like depth, right? Because that means you can practice against people who are much better than you, and you can learn from people who have like a new interpretation of the event. Because like I know for sure, I get stuck in my ways like in debate, and I sort of like debating in one manner, and learning from people in different ways are like really nice. That's really nice.
And then the other sort of like prong of our platform, which has a couple of parts that we'll go through and discuss, is that we realize that we live in the Bay Area, and that a local camp in the Bay Area doesn't provide the sort of accessibility that we're looking to provide to everyone in the nation.
Yeah. Because, you know, if you're not, we're not going to host a sleepaway camp, if at least, you know, this year. And so if you're not within 30-40 minutes or like of the Bay Area, it's a little bit difficult for you to be able to, you know, join a camp, right? Like commuting several hours for like a 10-hour long camp is really tough on you, your parents, and everything like that. Or if you're in New York, you can't really come, right? It's difficult.
Exactly.
So yeah, so continue, Alex.
Yeah. So we have sort of like 3 programs that we've designed for assistance in this way. The first is our Find a Coach matching service. Now, we realize that one of the big reasons that like teams often can't make it to tournaments is because it costs a lot of money to fly your coach out, or to just fly a parent out, or like someone to judge, right, for you.
Or and you need to find somebody to fly out. And that was like sort of the big revelation for us, because I know when, like, you know, we would go to like the tournament that we would travel to most is Bronx, for example. And so we would go to like the New York City Invitational, which is the Bronx tournament. We would see like parents who had flown out from like the West Coast because the team needed a judge, and because you have to provide the judge of the tournament. And while that works, like while you can fly out your parent, you know, if you're like a high school debater, sometimes it's less fun traveling with your mom, although sometimes it's more fun because traveling with Will's mom is always great. But if you're also like, you know, if you want to have good coaching, you can't split that. You can't get like 2 extra coaches and fly your mom out, or like fly somebody's mom out, because it's just too expensive, right? And so our sort of reconciliation was, you should be able to fly out. And this is something that we learned that, you know, that is something possible because Nueva started doing it later on in, you know, like our late junior, senior year, that you can fly out coaches to tournaments. no matter where they are, right? And then these like first year routes can provide like a unique perspective and like specific coaching to the tournament, right? Something that you would get more at a camp, but like now you get it throughout the entire year.
Exactly, right. So that provides like a huge strategic advantage and also like a great educational opportunity.
Yeah, and we also think like, given that Harker this year was bumping up intentionally or unintentionally their coaching or their judging by having better judges, if flying out a judge gives you the quid pro quo of like, hey, I'm bringing good judges to this tournament, right? I'm raising the standard of flow rounds that can be adjudicated at your tournament. And that's really important when it comes to like the scope of regular debate, right? Because debating a lay round, while it's an important part of public forum, is not as great as like debating a like flow round that is very deterministic. And a lay round is fine, but if your judges doesn't really know how to evaluate it, right? I would much rather have a first year out who debated the event.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I would add here in terms of like trying to increase accessibility and affordability is that sometimes you don't even need to fly anyone out. That there are plenty of former debaters who go to school at NYU, Columbia, some school in New York, who would be happy to spend a week coaching you at Bronx. But that, especially for like local teams or like teams that are still trying to build up, that they may not know all like the extensive network of debaters who graduated from debate. And so by this service, we're really hoping to take that barrier away for anyone who's looking to travel to a tournament, to always make sure there's an affordable first year out judge who can both judge for you, fulfill that requirement, and get you the experience and coaching that you need.
And I think Alex hits the nail on the head, right? Just to like clarify that. He's saying that if, let's say your program has been around for 5 years and you have alumni across the country and they will all judge for you at tournaments, that's fantastic. But if you're a smaller school and maybe your debate alumni either isn't as versed in the event or is concentrated in very specific areas, if you go anywhere else for a tournament, the chance that you just find a coach is really difficult because you need to know somebody, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to expand that and say like, hey, we know people and we'll find those people for you, right? If you want to hire a coach in New York City, we'll find you one. If you want to hire a coach in Milwaukee, we'll try to find you one. And so this is more centered for like the school side, where if your school wants to do better at a tournament, and this is not just like proselytizing, but if your school wants to do better at a tournament and you sort of want to get that in-round coaching, that in-round sort of feedback, it's great to have, like a first year out that you can just hire through our service.
Exactly.
And do you want to go to the next one, Alex? So
yeah,
those just to clarify, the first one was like sort of the camp. That's like the first thing that we sort of do, right? Local camp. The second is like offering a national coaching matching service for people throughout the year. And then Alex can continue talking about stuff.
Yeah. And so the third program that we're offering is an online coaching service. And you'll see that this is sort of like spiked up in other events like LD2, but that oftentimes, if you don't live in a place where debate is like a very heavy activity, for example, like in California or like Texas or New York, it can be difficult to find a judge who physically lives close enough to be able to like come and help you at your practices. Or for like smaller teams, you may not even like know anyone who you could look to for that sort of assistance. And so the idea of online coaching is that it's accessible to anyone, anywhere, and hopefully that would be able to we'd be able to sort of like remove that barrier in addition.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like it's important to note that like online coaching or like Skype coaching is not perfect, right? You can't like I can't write on your flow for you, but for 99% of things that we do in debate, online coaching is identical. And that's why it's like so big in events like LD and so on and so forth, right? Where people can coach just by Skyping in. Because if I can hear your arguments and I can see your presentation style, like 99% of what goes on in a public forum round is covered for me, right? And I can give you strategic feedback, I can give you speaking style feedback, I can give you general mannerism feedback just by seeing you debate, right? And I think that's something that like allows us to have a wider impact for any of our programs, which is important. So do you want to sort of go down, Alex, like who would be our online coaches?
Yeah, so like currently who we have on the website, Zubin, myself. Additionally, I believe we have Zubin's partner, Griffin Carpening. So he's the one who we mentioned earlier was coaching for Nueva. And then
we additionally have Jake Mangarelli, who was teaching at NLD this summer. He also taught at NDF.
He also
And
championed the Tournament of Champions.
TOC, just in case.
Yes.
Yeah, I would point that out.
In case that wasn't worth it. And so we chose, a lot of, we are exclusively Nueva debaters right now for online coaching. And that's just because they're our friends, they're close by, but also we know the way that they teach, we know the way that they coach, and we know we'll offer like a consistent, fantastic experience to people, right? So like Next Level Debate, our company, is sort of like focused on trying to give people the best and most affordable coaching experience that they can, like at this level, right? And we were all decent debaters all throughout high school. And so we should absolutely be able to, like coach you at whatever level you need, right? Like whether or not you want like last minute coaching, be like, hey, does this strategy work for me to win, Millard North, or like for me to win like the University of Kentucky tournament or Bronx? We can help you with that. Or if you're like, hey, I'm a newbie, I don't really understand what a flow is, or can you tell me what like a good speaking style and speed is, or how should I handle crossfires? Can I practice them with you? We can do all of that, right? Because we have done all of that at the highest and the lowest level. So we really know how to break it down for people if you're new to debate.
Yeah, we'd also like to point out that the other reason that we selected primarily Nueva coaches or former Nueva debaters is because like all of us at Nueva Debate have gone through all of those like levels of debate program. We've all been in the program with no official coach, struggling through varsity locals. Yeah. We've been at the stage where we're trying to break out and bid and go to the TOC, and we've been at the stage where we're trying to like achieve real success at national level tournaments. And so we've all had that range of experiences that we hope covers anything that anybody would ask for.
Yeah, and I think like that sort of dynamic is important, right? Because we understand where people are coming from if you're new. And I think, so Alex highlights a key point there. Do you want to sort of switch to the last thing, Alex, that you were sort of talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So all the things that we have already mentioned are up on the website, and this one's still a little bit more in development. But the last thing that we created or are working on to create is an online curriculum that provides essentially like lectures on how to do the basic and more advanced parts of debate, and that we essentially have split this up into two parts. So there's a primary set of introductory videos that cover like basics to like maybe like mid-tier intermediate debate. And those will be free. We will release them just like publicly to everyone so that everyone can have like, especially for those teams like where we were our freshman year who are trying to figure out like how should I organize my block file, or like as freshmen we didn't even know what a block was, right? Like so that because those are just like really, really small things that don't take a long time to learn, but can pose huge disadvantages to teams that don't have the coaching infrastructure. And so that we hope to make available to everybody. And then in addition, we'll have more like advanced videos that will be available for purchase for individuals who want like more specific like topic analysis or skills analysis.
Yeah, and one thing that we really want to focus on as far as like NLD goes is we really think it's important that like everybody who can't get access to any of these things should. Obviously, like, we have costs of like running our site and things like that, and we're all doing work for the company. But if you're part of like an urban debate league, like anywhere in the United States, I know I've talked at least to the Bay Area Urban Debate League about some of this. By all means, just shoot us an email at like nextleveldebate@gmail.com, and just like sort of say like, hey, like we don't have the resources to afford this. What can we work out? And then we'll be happy to like work with everybody individually, because the goal is to sort of give people opportunity, right? That's sort of the main theme. But either way, just picking up from where Alex left off on like online or like on like video series coaching, we think it's a good way to sort of give people an introduction, right? Obviously, feedback is the best way to learn, unequivocally, right? And no one is ever going to tell you that like you can learn just as well from some online course as you can from, hearing somebody tell you what you did wrong in a round and what you can do better. But the difference is you have to start at some point, right? And so like getting, online coaching or like video series coaching to just learn about things in debate is really useful. Someone is asking that why does it say that the hours are sold out? I think it's because right now we're trying to work through figuring out timing for our coaches. I'm just going to hop on and sort of proselytize the, sort of individual coaching, the Skype coaching. So as far as Skype coaching goes in NLD, right now we're sold out, but what we're trying to work out is a system where every time you buy hours from us, we will guarantee you how often a debater can meet with you, how often they can talk to you. That might be 1 hour a week. It could be 4 hours a week. It really depends on their schedule. But for us, at least, that way it gives us a guarantee of how often you're willing to meet. So, the coaches that we hire get consistent work. And it gives you an opportunity to say like, hey, I'm not going to buy a coaching package and then be stranded because, my student has finals now and he like can't do any work, right? That's really important to us.
Yeah. And just going back to reemphasize what Zubin was saying earlier, right? The whole goal of NLD is to make debate more accessible. And for things like online coaching, it may be difficult for us to reduce the prices just because like we have to cover the cost of hiring a debater to do that. But for example, for the online curriculum where it's relatively cheap to just provide the videos to like an additional consumer, we're definitely willing to work with like any sort of situational barriers that might prevent you from being able to like access these things. We don't think those should exist.
Yeah, and so we recommend everybody who's on the stream now, if you want to tell anybody about this or whatever, but to like check back the NLD website in like a week at most. Hopefully our like coaching differences will be worked out, and so that way like you can get right in and start purchasing hours, because that way you can sort of like get better. And so as far as it goes right now, I think we have up on the sign up page. If you have any questions at all, please just email us, right? Like we have the email linked right there, because we're small, right? It's just like, it's just Alex and I doing this right now. And so like, obviously we're amenable to any differences, right? So if you have any questions, just email us, just pop us an email.
Yeah.
I think we can sort of, if there are any other questions, I can talk about Next Level Debate forever. We can go over like some fun stuff that we did at our camps, the kind of drills we ran. But if anybody has any other questions, particularly about Next Level Debate and their services, that would be great. But while you're asking that, I'll just sort of like run through. I know this is a bit redundant, but sort of like the 4 sort of things that we're sort of doing, because like Alex said, right, the goal is to expand opportunity. We want to sort of like take the mean level of debate, like the skills and everything that happens, and sort of raise that, right? So it's a question of like raising people at their best. If you're consistently winning national tournaments, fantastic. Sign up and we'll have you win some more. Or if you're not doing particularly well, you're going 2-4 at tournaments, and you really sort of want to break into the next echelon of debate, sign up as well. And so we'll sort of like coach you in that regard, right? It's really a thing of anybody at any level should have access to this. It's like absolute equity in that regard. Yeah, and so I think like a good question to sort of talk about is the ballpark cost for a tournament hire. And so I think the pricing varies significantly. We're going to try to price it for the cost of either taking your mother, or like your father out to a tournament. That has like opportunity costs for them, right? They can't, like, if they're working on like a Friday, they can't really do that work. They don't really have like their full weekend that they can enjoy. And, you get an awesome coaching experience. And we're asking a lot of college students when they come to coach out at tournaments, it's like a whole weekend where they could be studying or like hanging out with their friends. And like missing an entire weekend is like a reasonably big deal. And so, the prices reflect that. And so I think depending on whether or not you're, basically the prices depend significantly, but they can range anywhere from, like $100 to a couple $100, whether or not you're flying out somebody, stuff like that. And we're also happy to sort of like help work out logistics for you. Our primary goal is to match people together. So if you're looking for a debater in the New York area or someone who will fly out to New York tournament with you, by all means, we'll hit you up, right? Like, you can contact us and we'll tell you. But, we're also happy to sort of work on stuff like, hey, how do I get this debater out there? and we'll communicate with them and say like, oh, you know, we think like them taking the train is the best option, so on and so forth. That's just sort of like, we want to like, you know, help you get as good coaching as possible. And so we're willing to do a little bit more work on that end.
Yeah, and we point out that like oftentimes there are like very little things that can make a big deal. For example, like we may be able to cut down your cost by like finding your coach like a hotel room that they can share with somebody else or something like that. Because
exactly.
like those things just come from like knowing other people, which is not really like a meritocratic skill in any way, shape, or form, but that we hope can help more people go to tournaments.
Yeah, and you know, like we have a lot of friends on the circuit, right? So we have like a reasonable network of debaters that we can reach out to. If you don't have that, that's why we're here. And that's like the whole point. And so, yeah, again, right, like the four sort of services are like the local Bay Area camp, which is sort of our test market. It's the place that like, you know, we were first established, what we first did. Then there's like, you know, sort of the expansion of like, you know, we'll find you coaches for tournaments. There's the online coaching. That's like 4 of us right now with more, you know, most of our debaters are willing to work. So I know like Alex's partner is happy doing some work, stuff like that.
Yeah, and we'll definitely add more coaches to address demand.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So like, don't feel afraid if like you know, want to sign up and you're like, I don't really know if I can have enough time. Right. I don't really know if like there's enough time for me right now, or like if they'll have enough time for me, because we'll always fit to accommodate you. And then lastly is Alex's you know, our online curriculum, which Alex sort of talked about at a high level. I don't know, Alex, if you want to sort of break down what like an example first module is, and then we can sort of conclude.
Yeah. So I don't have the curriculum up like right now, but essentially,
no, yeah, just briefly.
The first couple of lessons will like they'll start like very, very basic. And I know that for a lot of you, this will just be redundant, so you don't need to watch these videos. But again, remember the core idea of NLD is that like we make debate accessible for anyone. So for the person who's never had any formal coaching and doesn't necessarily understand like what the summary speech is supposed to do, like that will be included in the first couple of videos, because we want to make that information accessible to everyone. And from there, we'll move on to like things like case writing, block writing, and not only like the surface level, but like I think that even skills as fundamental as these, you will see that strong teams actually have a like categorically different approach to these sorts of things, right? Like the way in which good teams write cases is not let's think of like a good time sink and then put all of our eggs in this basket, right? Like teams strategically develop cases so that every single link and every single impact in their case is like a weapon, and that cases are essentially undroppable, and no part is like just like some fluff that they've put there, right? Like developing like much stronger fundamental skills, and it'll go on into like higher level sort of like summary analysis, lay adaptation, because I think that's like one of the big reasons why sometimes it's difficult to make the next step. Even with formal coaching, that can also be really difficult, because lay adaptation is something that you even like very technical coaches don't necessarily have a lot of like expertise in, just because it's more of a soft skill. So we're also going to like try to cover that and other topics like that.
Yeah, and I think like so. Alex sort of like what Alex is outlining, right, is like a thing that starts off simple and then gets like extremely complicated, because we're all huge debate nerds, right? We did it forever in high school and like consistently, and now we're doing it in college, right? We love it, and so we have like infinite things to say, and so that's what's like really important. And you know, I think like Kevin is, you know, like joking around talking about like, you know, the average price at a tournament just taking Will's mom out, but he makes a good point when he says, you know, like people don't understand what the summary speech needs to do, and they're like, you know, they're seniors in high school, and like to some degree, right, it's like super complicated, and we were lucky to have awesome coaching all throughout high school like Cayman, and so like we learned some of those things, and that's really useful because we can sort of translate those skills and pass them along, right? Either through the form of an online video or through the form of direct one-on-one coaching, right? And that sort of works.
Exactly.
I think so. Now should be the time for any absolute last-minute questions. If they're about NLD, the better. Just remember, so just like capping it off, we will be hosting a like AMA over the week of Bronx. So starting, sort of the Bronx weekend and then like running through that next week. And we think like that'll give people time to ask a lot of questions, gauge interest and tell us, like how many people we should hire, what kind of services we should offer, because we're also looking for your advice. This is not like some big company that is like has faceless people running it. We're right here in front of you. We're doing a podcast and we'll try to do one every week. It's something that we love and it's something that we wanted to share with all of y'all.
And along those lines too, in addition to like suggestions about what you think the company or like what you think Next Level Debate might be effective in doing and what might be the most helpful, since we are going to be doing these podcasts every week, we do also want to hear from you. What do you want on these podcasts? Because if not, Zubin and I will come up with the topics that we think are the most helpful. But if there's something that you want to see on here, we're definitely open to putting that up, and we're going to try to like adapt most to our audience.
Yeah, and like these podcasts, this one is fairly dry. It was more informational. We were sort of telling you a lot of things, but what we're going to try to shoot for is like the fun debate cast that we had when it was just like us laughing and talking about like random things that happened on the circuit, right? And so as we go to tournaments, stuff like that, the sort of like standard tournament enjoyment is going to start up again. And I think it'll be fun. And just sort of hitting some last minute questions. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, go ahead.
So like right now we'll be sticking primarily to public forum. I think we've actually hired out our coaches for events like parliamentary debate. I don't know about LD yet. We all debated at like a reasonably high level in public forum, and we have skills that translate to maybe not absolute varsity policy, but translate well to other events. And so don't believe just because we are like, PF debaters at heart that that's the only thing that we can coach. But right now, that's sort of our prime focus. Somebody's asking about like coaching flexibility. It really depends. Our goal is to try to match you with one coach. And so we're going to try to say, you as a coach are like, you as a team will only work with Griffin targeting, and Griffin will be your coach, right? For like, as long as you have like your slotted hours. So maybe he won't work with you at like Saturday from 2 to 4 every week, but he'll at least work with you for like 2 hours a week, depending on his schedule, right? That's like sort of the guarantee. And sometimes he will work for more, sometimes he'll work for less, but you will always have Griffin with you. And we think that's important because, like we're all coaches, but knowing a team is really helpful in telling them exactly what to improve on. And so we want to give people that like unique aspect of, we're going to give you one coach and like, they're going to be your coach. And I think that's important, Alex, I interrupted you. Were you going to say anything? What were you going to add on?
Oh, yeah. No, it's all good. We also, one of the other ideas that we had for DebateCast was like bringing in like guest debaters. So if there are like people you want to see, we'll put them on the DebateCast.
Yeah, we think that's important. Let's see. Last thing, someone asks, what's Next Level Debate? We'll give you the super short pitch. Next Level Debate is, it's a small company that Alex and I run. We offer 4 services to sort of like raise the mean level of debate across the circuit. And we want to give people and like students the opportunities that we didn't really have our first year and a half in high school. We were lucky to get solid coaching, but we know what it's like to be lost and not know what to do in the debate circuit. And so we sort of offer 4 sort of packages. The first is like a camp that's local in the Bay Area that we run. It's every summer. The second is, or at least for now, the second is, like coach matching, where we offer a coach who like travel with you to a tournament because we think that's like really helpful for teams. It's like exceptionally useful. You get solid coaching, you raise the level of judging. It's just better for everybody there. So that's like a coaching matching service. We offer online coaching where one of 4, as of right now, members of the Nueva PF team or former members would coach you in like a very intimate setting, talking about like, exactly what you can do to improve. And then finally is like a set of online videos that we're curating and creating that will tell you exactly how to, sort of like level up your debate skills and sort of go through the general info in debate that sometimes you just miss if you don't have like a solid coach. So it's not the individual stuff. It's more like, how do I format my blocks at a very high level, right? What kind of arguments should I order, or how do I layer defense in rounds? Things like that. Yeah. Anything else to add, Alex? Otherwise, I'll just continue answering questions.
Yeah. Keep going with the questions. I mean, yeah, I think
Okay.
that's the most important part.
Yeah. So people are asking, like, is NLD going to morph into paying for DebateCast? I am NLD and DebateCast, so it doesn't really work. Like Alex and I are sort of both. And so the video lecture series will not be replacing DebateCasts. The idea is, yeah, it's an absolutely separate thing, right? It's something that'll be on our website. It's something that people will have to pay for. DebateCast is like YouTube podcasts about like debate. It's obviously free. And so someone asks, will those videos be available for everybody to view? A lot of them will. And so we're going to sort of like scale it, right? The basic stuff is going to be a little bit, it's going to be absolutely free because everybody should know basic level. And then like once we get to really advanced techniques, so probably like layering defense or like comparative link weighing in summary or link weighing in final focus, stuff like that, or strength of link analysis, or how to read through a card super quickly in prep time, right? Like a little bit higher level skills. That will be like sort of a paid service to cover a cost of having to spend 50 hours creating a series of videos for y'all. Just knocking down. Oh yeah, Alex.
And to point out, yeah, Zubin's right. Like we do want to be able to like essentially cover our costs for creating the series. But again, like UDLs, like struggling lone wolf debaters, stuff like that.
What is a UDL, Alex?
Sorry. Oh yeah, what exactly? UDL is an urban debate league. So they're like often debate leagues for primarily like low income schools that provide like a path for those students to debate. So any sort of like situational factors that like may hamper your ability to debate or your ability to like purchase for the levels of the online curriculum, just let us know by email and we'll work it out.
Yeah, and like I just want to stress, right? It's Alex and I. Like we are very low key. We love this. We're gonna do like the best job that we think is gonna be offered for all y'all, and we're very informal. So just reach out to us with any questions, right? And that's why we're sort of hosting this. Someone's asking sort of, will DebateCast change as a result of NLD? And really yes and no. So there might be some DebateCasts that are like this one, that are talking about services that we would offer, because this sort of dominated about like 45 minutes of our discussion. But there will also be DebateCasts where I'll be at Bronx and I'll just be like having fun with random people. And Alex mentioned that, we're trying to bring on other debaters onto the cast or onto like the podcasts that are just like, that are on the circuit, because they'll have insights to offer that we won't have anymore because we're not debating and in the nitty gritty, right? And DebateCast is above all else just like a fun thing that we like making. We're all big fans of debate, so it's just fun. Last question that I see is, would we be willing to hire people outside the Bay Area? So there are three things that we hire people for. The first is the camp. The second is the coach finding. And the third is the online coaching. And so for one of those, we'll hire people outside the Bay Area consistently. The camp is local in the Bay Area. We run it with our friends. We run it with people that we know, and we know the way that they coach. So probably not. The online curriculum or like the online coaching, right now it's for New Wave of debaters. We like the consistency of the coaching, and we like the fact that they have a sense of empathy, because we were all in situations where we didn't have like awesome resources our freshman and part of our sophomore year. And then the last one, which is where we would hire people, is like coach finding, where absolutely, if you are a coach who is in Kentucky or Milwaukee or New York or Florida or anywhere, reach out to us and we will by all means get back to you. We'll say like, hey, we'll add you to our roster. Any coaching gigs that anybody asks for in that area, we will by all means send to you, and then you'll be paid obviously for coaching over the weekend. We think it's an awesome way of sort of balancing that. It's a great way for, if you just want to be involved with the debate circuit but don't have a team that you're contracted for, it's a great way to do that. And so I really like that. Any other additions, Alex?
Yeah, that's, I think that if you are tuning into this podcast as like a graduated debater who is available for hiring at tournaments, obviously we want you to contact us so we can add you to like our network, because that's helpful for everyone. For you, for us, for people who want to find tournament hires. Yeah,
exactly. But I'll give everybody a last 1 minute to answer questions, but I think we're pretty much done. We got through all the information we wanted to get through. We proselytized for a while, and hopefully we answered y'all's questions. So just to conclude, while we're waiting for any last question to come through, this is like a debate cast where we're introducing Next Level Debate, which is like a company that Alex and I run. We offer a myriad of services, and we want to give debaters an opportunity that we didn't get a chance to when we were younger. And that's like important to us. And so by all means, tune into the next debate cast. It should probably happen next week. We'll post on Reddit sometime about that, because this is something that, like, we'll do probably a little bit more regularly than I did when I was in high school. And we will also be hosting, and this is the big one, an Ask Me Anything on the debate subreddit the week of October 14th. So that's like starting on a Saturday and stretching through. And basically, so the weekend of Bronx, essentially. So from October 14th to sort of like the 20th, we'll be answering any questions that you have that like we can sort of find. And so, post on that subject, like anything that you can. And so we'll send up that post in a little bit. But yeah, someone asks, Alex, have you seen the chat?
No.
Alex is not reading the chat.
Yeah,
sorry, Atreya. That's unfortunate for you. And then that question, how drastic was our change? This will be the last thing we sort of answer. How drastic was the change between 10th and 11th grade, Alex, for you at least? For PF, for like how you debated.
Yeah. So my change from 10th to 11th grade was extremely drastic.
Mm-hmm.
So 10th grade, I did not finish with any notable accomplishments. And then junior year, I closed out Berkeley with this guy and also finaled at Stanford. So I would say that like debate is very sporadic sort of in how it rewards individuals, that like overall individuals who work harder generally do better, but that sometimes you can feel like you're putting in a lot of work and you're not getting a lot out, which is often true. And that you should continue to put the hard work in because eventually the results will come.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like Griffin and I had like the sort of the same situation. Sophomore year, our best achievement was quarterfinaling at Berkeley. And then, sort of running like a really sneaky case. And then like junior year, we sort of like had a lot more success like on the circuit. And so I think like sometimes it just happens very quickly. And it's not something that is a result of just like instantaneous change. It's gradual change over time that has you like you hit a threshold. And then like once you break through that threshold, you sort of like realize more things about debate, the way arguments interact, and then you can do a little bit better on the circuit.
Exactly.
And so that's what we're trying to get everybody to. We're trying to have everybody experience those changes, get those things. That's what NLD is for. But yeah, do you want to just say bye, Alex? I'll say bye too.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning into the debate cast, and hope you have good luck in your tournaments.
Yeah. We hope everybody has fun. By all means, if you want to check us out, it's www.nextleveldebate.org. So www.nextleveldebate.org. It's pretty simple. Or you can shoot us an email at nextleveldebate@gmail.com. We hope you have fun with this, and we'd love to sort of tell y'all more about this. It's something Alex and I love. That's why we did this podcast. But thank you everybody for tuning in, and anybody who's watching the like recorded video afterwards. It was very fun, and we'll see you all later. Bye.